Okay, this is Greg, ShelterBox man. And we are going to tour the ShelterBox that is sent out for emergency relief by ShelterBox organization and sponsored. One of the sponsors, main sponsors, is Rotary.
Right on.
Correct, Greg?
You got it.
All right. Show us the box in which it all goes in.
Okay, so everything that goes in a ShelterBox goes in a box like this so that it can be easily shipped anywhere in the world. And it's designed to be carried by 2 people. And inside there are basically life-saving essentials. Things like a robust tent like this, cooking equipment, a set of water filters, sometimes a stove. We also have mosquito netting for tropical environments, and a tool set. So basically all the stuff people need when they're trying to get back on their feet after a natural and man-made disaster.
Amazing. Here, hold this 1 second.
Yep.
It has to go a little bit. So one thing from after a weekend of our humanitarian crisis simulation, this encompasses all of those key things that we talked about over the weekend and when we were building the shelter. So you not only are taking into consideration the need of shelter and protection, but you have all of those things that we need to take into a separate compartment for the sleeping arrangements like we talked about. The tarp itself is structurally sound and can be moved if needed to be for movement of the community. It can last, how long is it, Greg? 10 months?
Well, anywhere between 6 and 12 months depending on how much sunlight. So the biggest enemy of fabric like this, even though this gets special UV coating to last longer, the sun is just its biggest enemy. So while it's designed to withstand a lot of strong wind, we've wind tested these to 70 miles an hour and they've still withstood that. Its sun is the biggest enemy. So about 6 to 12 months if it's in continuous use.
And what it'll have then is what we talked about, you're coming in with no, especially if you're a refugee, even if we put into that situation, you're coming in with nothing. So here you're supplying a family with the dishes are needed, blankets for warmth or even cushioning. You have rain gear, you have your mosquito netting, and you have multiple doors. So you're able to do, as we showed in our weekend, the ventilation piece coming through. And even taking into consideration some of those extra pieces, like we said, of the water filtration, of cooking, not meant to be inside, but having a space, and even a rain shelter out the front where you can cook and it won't affect the inside. One question I know I had, there was tools here that were similar to what we talked about even for sanitation. What is considered, or what does ShelterBox at all talk about the needs, or where people in the community, if it was set up like that, would have for proper sanitation and bathrooms?
So what we provide is some basic tools so that they can create similar circumstances to what they're used to. So if they're used to setting up latrines, there is a shovel here, there is a special kind of spade they can use for digging or for gardening. But one of the things we also look at when we're setting up, when we're helping people set themselves back up, is to help them establish proper distances from rivers and lakes and so forth, so that any drainage from latrines and so forth wouldn't affect their water quality. But in cases where there are refugee camps, one of the things that we have to cooperate with other organizations on is things like sanitation, access to water, food, security, and other things. So for the most part, our focus is on giving them the shelter and the other basics. And if their custom is to use a local latrine, then the tools will help. If not, they might have to work with other agencies that we might cooperate with in the field to help people address that issue.
Excellent. And what did you say was your response time? Like in some instances, that hurricanes are coming. You can pre-plan for that. Right. Even say in a hurricane situation, what would be your ShelterBox's available response time to that?
Yeah, so we have people on call constantly who are our volunteers, basically saying, here's when I'm available to go on response to a disaster. And like you're saying, if we know that a major storm is coming, we might make some phone calls even before that maybe a typhoon makes landfall. Like we knew the Typhoon Haiyan in the Philippines last year was going to be massive. And so we were already on alert before the typhoon had struck. We also, in that case, had some response team members already on the ground responding to an earthquake that had happened a month earlier, and we had equipment in the country. We had gear, shelter boxes, tents, and other gear in the country already. So fortunately in that case we also had material in the way. But in terms of response time, we like to be among the first to be on the ground because very often the first days after a disaster when people need help the most. So we will get on a plane within hours of finding out that there was a natural disaster and after confirming that our help may actually be needed.
Perfect. Thank you, Greg, and giving us a ground tour of the ShelterBox tent
You're
and all
welcome.
that can go in.
You're welcome. For more information, shelterboxusa.org. Come find us there and learn more.
Woohoo! Thanks, Greg.
You bet.